Okay. Let's begin. So this is the third session of a series of interviews on source keeping that was initiated based on Amanda's curiosity and sensing into what had emerged in the field as a term, source keeping, and folks who started being curious about what it means to be a source keeper and how to be a source keeper skillfully. So in this kind of emergent dojo, you might say, of all of us together learning the emerging arts of source keeping, this became, I think, a real classroom in a lot of ways for us to be able to talk to each other and share and learn with each other around the mystery of relating with source and how to be creative within an intersubjective capacity with each other and as individuals as well. So Amanda did an amazing job, I would say, interviewing me and Ria. It was very, I think, for myself and Ria, quite intimate and vulnerable to be able to be so, I felt like warmly and securely held by Amanda in the aliveness of her curiosity and then in the aliveness of the groups holding. And now I want to just set an intention to honor. I feel like I have big shoes to fill, being put in a position where I want to hold Amanda in the same way that she held me, and be able to really hold space for the depth and nuance and actually quite sacred beauty of the way that I've experienced her tune into source and work with the energetics, the crazy gymnastics of navigating that kind of energy. So just to allow everyone to arrive, hello to those who just came into this container. I'm going to invite everyone to check in into the chat. So if you can share any questions that you have around source keeping, questions that you are holding in your body around, the nature of this work that you want to put into the field, then please check in with that, what you want to learn from Amanda. And I'll read them out loud as they arrive. Why is it important to find out what source keeping is? My question, since we've had 3 female source keeping inquiries, is there a shift with male source keeping? I'm really appreciating the open way Amanda speaks of Eros and wondering how she sees that connecting with source keeping. How do you practically, in a real way, tell the difference between what's truly from source versus just you? How do you understand the tension between one, being an uninhibitedly free, sovereign, creative agent, and two, source being something to be sensed and to some indeterminate extent honored or obeyed? Now I'll take another minute just in case there's folks who have other questions burning and alive in them. Oh, are we ready to go all the way to the source? I recently came across the word and concept of devotion. Is that something that is alive for you? Is source God? Source is a mystery to me, and I'm inclined to explore its contours as they arise. Oh, I missed one from David. Source keeping feels related to the intimacy of allowing egoic boundaries to dissolve and source to inhabit and express through this embodiment. How do we move from trust fall to trust bridge? And a comment from Marianne about how the ego can hijack the process. What if there's no real source, made up based on immediacy with discovery and authority? Is source elegant, and does it need to be? And will you, Amanda, be answering questions today from self or source? That might not just be from you, Amanda, that might be for all of us here. Okay. I think for now that feels complete enough, but if anyone has other questions, keep dropping them into the chat. I want to just take a moment to allow all of these questions to percolate in the middle of the field and do its work. So why don't we just take a moment of silence, 30 seconds, and just sense all of these inquiries swimming together, making new life. Okay, Amanda. Are you ready? Yes. So we'll begin just as a light agenda. We'll begin by Amanda and I in one-on-one interview with each other, and I'll ask her some questions, just following the threads of aliveness in the conversation. And then I'll invite Ria at some point to join us. And Ria will also ask Amanda any questions that are alive in her. And then after that, we will invite everyone in the full group to come into collective dialogue with us. And we'll kind of feel into right timing with those phases. But for now, I would ask everyone to please turn off your video. So it's just myself and Amanda on the screen. Thank you. Now I mostly have you on the screen, Amanda. Do you need anything, Amanda? Just to arrive, be here, moment of silence.
No, I think I'm good.
Good. So let's check in first. How are you arriving into this Source Keeper interview?
I was very nervous, my heart beating. And there was also a lot of a sensation of tingling in my chest, which I associate with my heart opening. And yeah, I love these questions also. Like those are my questions actually. So I feel resonance, like listening to the questions. They are also my questions, which I don't have any answers to. So it feels both vulnerable and bold to, because I asked you to interview me and I felt weird about that, but somehow I think I wanted to put myself in this situation. And yeah, I think that's how I'm arriving. I'm grateful for you and Ria and everyone.
Yeah, thank you for asking to be put in this situation. I'm very grateful to you as well. Thank you, Amanda. So let's begin with this question, which is, what is source keeping to you, Amanda?
So I think I first came across with that term during, like I first really started to pay attention to that during Participation Mystique, the gathering that you organized. But only later when I started to organize the gathering in Brazil, that when I was in meetings with Nick, and I was having ideas or doubts or insecurities, or he would always ask me, go check with source or something like that. I don't remember how exactly he would say, but he would like ask me to check if whatever I was putting forward was coming, where was it coming from? So this is where the inquiry started for me, because I started to pay attention to, okay, where is it coming from? So I think, yeah, I could say I don't know what source skipping is, and I don't know even if it's a real thing, But what I'm starting to notice is that it is this process of mm, putting myself available so that something that wants to be manifested can be manifested through my initiatory energy and my leadership. Um, and um, and also because I have been researching leadership styles for the past 4 years now, I became very curious about source keeping because I started to wonder what would it be like if all leaders would ask themselves, like, okay, where is it coming from? Where is this coming from? Is it coming from source? That question. And I think I know when something is coming from source when it really wants to happen and when things start to unfold in a almost like in a magical way, like synchronicities and things connecting very easily. And it's actually, I don't have to do much effort or force anything.
Hmm.
It's more of like, oh, okay, like I'm allowing this to happen. And I still have to be present and I still have to make choices. But like one example with Brazil was when I had this vision. I was still in Berlin and I had this vision. Okay, I want to host the next gathering in Brazil. And at that point, I didn't know if it was just my idea or if it was something that really wanted to happen. But then Kim Maynard, she told me, Amanda, I'm coming to Brazil in February. Can we meet? And I was like, oh, okay, that's the cue, like the door opening for possibility for. And when I chose to really say yes, and all the doors starts opening, they start opening, and then it's like even overwhelming because the amount of energy that comes from source maybe is a lot of energy, and during my whole process until the gathering happened, I was in a constant state of like, when you're like awake and your attention is more. I was always thinking about the gathering. I was always thinking about everything that I needed to do. My attention was always there. Um, that's one thing. Another thing that I wanted to say about what I'm learning about the meaning of source keeping is that it's very connected to what I'm realizing is that it's very connected to protecting life also.
Hmm.
And I see the metaphor of pregnancy and this feminine holding and like the baby coming from source inside your womb. And then the mother has to keep that womb safe. And if I am gestating a life, it's like my responsibility to keep, and that's why the word keeping is important. I realize I have to keep my environment and what I eat and what I receive. I have to have some awareness of what is entering the field because that's going to affect the baby, the thing that I'm carrying in my womb. And that's something. And even before the baby is there, it's like what seeds do I let, what seeds am I open to receive in my womb? And keeping my womb protected is a kind of source keeping also. Like keeping that source point safe and like I want it to be somehow, I don't know. So, and I don't think that is something that just women can do. I think men also have wombs. Yeah, so also that's a good question about like how men take care of their wombs also, even if they don't feel the womb in a physical way. I don't know. That's a curiosity I have also.
Mm.
Can I share one more thing? Because that was coming through this morning. Because I was inevitably thinking of this question. And the image that came to me was this image of 12 grandmothers. Like, I think there's something like that, like the council of grandmothers in the world. I think there is something like that. And I was just like visualizing 12 grandmothers all over the world. And I was imagining them as the source keepers of the womb of the earth. And what if like everything that someone wanted to do in the planet had to, like something big, had to go through their council and they could veto things because they're protecting life and they're keeping the womb. Yeah, they're source keeping.
Oh.
And yeah, I just saw this image today, and I think, and I'm thinking also now of source keeping as also as a collective thing that we do, and not only something that I do as an individual. Yeah.
Mm. Mm. Thank you. Yeah, there's something very powerful about the image that you just shared around the 12 grandmothers around the world co-holding that womb. And something feels very alive and resonant. And I notice actually it calls forth like a deep sense of care and responsibility, but not just in like, sometimes those words feel like it's like not enough to really, really capture the visceral feeling of what's evoked in my body when you describe protecting life. It's like, what does it mean to protect life? And there's a form of yeah, like guardianship, like when you're keeping something very, very precious and sacred that needs to be held, especially in its nascency, like when it's very young, it's just a seed and it's about to grow. That's very, very tender. And it's different. It's not, maybe it might grow into something that can be resilient and be in the world, but at the beginning, there's a kind of tenderness and gentleness that's asked for, that I actually often see you modeling in the way that you hold space. Very, like there's very much of a midwifing quality. Yeah. And I think I want to ask, the question that's alive for me now is, It's like, what happens? Like, what are the cues in your body and in your sensing when you feel that closely connected to the life that you must protect?
Mm. Mm. The cues in my body. Can you repeat the question one more time?
Yeah. Like, what are I think Bonnie might call it biomarkers. It's like, how do you know when you're close to that life that you're protecting, like that life in your womb?
Mm.
And maybe some of this question might include, like, when do you feel far away from it? When do you feel like you're not actually close to that
Mm.
life force, you could say?
Yeah. Yeah. I think different people will have different strategies. And for me, what comes up is the life that I want that I was protecting when I was in this kind of role of source keeping. It was the vision that I was holding was the vision of Lover Earth, and what I was seeing that could be possible, but I didn't know actually but it was more like there were images and but they were very mysterious to me as well. So this life is actually the life that I'm supposed to protect. Is this mysterious thing that I don't actually I can't touch. I don't know. But when it happened, like I could recognize, oh, okay, this is what I was trying to midwife.
Hmm.
And the metaphor of motherhood is I still keep coming back to it because it's like you don't know who your baby is going to be. And it can become anything and anyone. Um, so there's this mystery. And I think my role as mother, learning to be a mother, is to first protect his life and then get to know this baby, like, oh, who are you, and what is it, what what is it, and then also love it as it is, even if it's not exactly as I was imagining. And for me, what really helped me to nurture this connection was to um, really experiment with the idea of Lover Earth, for example. So like here with the plants I have in my garden, I would always come back to that simple things that were my source of inspiration in the first place. I would always come back to where everything started, which was like my curiosity about a flower, or my love for my cats, or something very simple that would give me that, like that spaciousness of, oh. And in the prep sessions that we did in Brazil, Nick, he sourced like 5 homeworks on how to connect with the earth as lover. And those exercises were things that like I already did in some level, but like it pushed me a little bit over my edge. And I would always come back to the simplicity of my source of inspiration. I think that's the best way to put it, because
Hmm.
mm, yeah. And then I would feel like in my body, I would feel more relaxed also. And I would do that because like taking decisions for the group, and then like there's a lot of fear actually that comes in, and like, are you doing the right thing, or this is going to impact this and this and that, or like not knowing the consequences of some choices, and then not knowing sometimes how to, do I need to consult everyone for this choice or not, and then a lot of fear. So, but if I keep like in this fear vibration, it will shake my relationship with my source of inspiration, which was actually relaxation and pleasure. And so I would always have to come back to that state in my body and do a lot of self-care, and which was hard. It was really hard to balance these two things, because yeah, it was I was also dealing with financial decisions, big financial decisions that I never did in my life, like in relation to a group that was trusting my capacity, but people only trusted me because I had this initial inspiration,
Hmm.
So basically I think the answer is just to the biomarkers you said would be actually pleasure and relaxation, that I would be more, and it would feel like home. It would feel like staying, it would feel easy. The difficult thing was to bridge that into something that people could enter, like a gathering that people could experience the simplicity that I was experiencing myself. So
Hmm.
it's almost paradoxical, because I had to create a lot of complexity to experience simplicity. And yeah, but it was worth it, the journey. Mm.
Hmm. Hmm.
One
Wow.
thing also, sorry, one more thing that is, I think it's also a biomarker, is because I was in celibacy for a year, since May 2022 until May 2023. And it was during that period that all my creative energy, all my arrows had to be directed to this creation. And I only realized now, but I didn't know it at the time. But I realized like the importance of not dissipating my energy. It was very focused on one thing, and kind of, and it all started also because of your invitation to transmute arrows into art. So that was also the source of my inspiration. Like that's where it started. Yeah.
Hmm. What you're sharing now reminds me of what you were describing about even before maybe the life starts growing in the womb, you have to keep the womb safe so that it can recognize and receive that seed, the source of inspiration. That's what, when you were describing your year of celibacy, I was like, oh, you were in a way saving yourself, but not in.
Yeah. Literally.
Yes. And
That's
your
how it
body knew how
felt.
to do that. You didn't have to say, oh, I'm going to protect yeah. There's something about the wisdom of your body that just does its unfolds in its own knowing. And then also what you were describing about the bridging, the challenge being the bridging. I think I want to focus on that a bit
Mhm.
because I really appreciated your articulation of when you're with source, when you're with life, it feels easeful and pleasurable and relaxed. And you described it as being like home. But then there's something around that kind of simplicity when it's meeting, then the other realities of organizing gatherings and needing to coordinate logistics and kind of like, yeah, needing to navigate the complexities of also human relating and money and that kind of thing. So yeah, there's something really like there, it feels like there's like core capacities or skills that are asking to be learned in that like bridge that you described between where it's very simple and then that kind of like the messy kind of place where everything manifests and we're trying to actually create there and work with bodies and earth and yeah, triggers and contractions and messiness really. So I think that just to kind of run with that, my question is in that bridge, which sometimes feels like it's like a channel as well. Like, how do you keep, what are your practices to really be skillful in that bridging between the kind of like purity of source, you could say, and then its manifestation of whatever it wants to become in the world?
Mm. I don't know. I don't think I have. I don't think I. I don't think I have these practices. If I had, I think I would be much more. I don't know. But let me think. One thing that I notice is that even like I think this is true for every artist. Like when you're doing art, this probably your source of inspiration and your final work might be different or not necessarily obviously connected. But then what each person receives and perceives of that artwork can, like, I can read someone's artwork and see that they can feel the source of inspiration in that,
Mm,
or maybe not. So, and I felt like the gathering I organized was actually intentionally an artwork. So I always accepted within myself that, okay, every person will have a completely different take because it is like a abstract painting that each person will read something different. So I was actually not so obsessed about, oh, everyone needs to understand my message, or I think at least. But I was also kind of like, okay, and why are you here? What do you want to learn?
mm,
And that was my anchor in the relating with others, because if people were choosing to be there, it was for a reason.
mm,
That was my assumption. Um, it was because they wanted to learn or experience something, and they had chosen to do so. So I would always try to come back to that, even if their reason to be there was not my reason to have created the gathering. Their reason might be different, and that was okay also.
mm,
Um, yeah, because I was just one of my principles was also like, let's celebrate diversity. And we had a shaman, from Brazil, and we had a guy from Germany, and we had like a capoeira teacher, and we had, you know,
Two kids.
so 2 kids. And yeah, I don't know if I answered your question, but it's a good question.
Yeah, maybe to add like now that you've given more context as well to, do you mind actually sharing the 3 principles of your gathering? I think.
Yeah, so it was uh, learn from the plants, collect and plant seeds, learn from the animals, and humans are animals too, and slow down. The first one was actually slow down so you can feel.
Hmm.
Yeah. And I think I was very inspired by you in the way you organized everything. In a way, I think I just used the scaffolding that you had in participation mistake, and I saw like the principles in Berlin and the principles in Brazil, and how they they dictate what's happening. So maybe that's one way of bridging, is like having these principles clear for everyone. And in the middle of messiness, you can always come back like, hey, these are the principles. You have agreed to come here under these principles. Like, so yeah, but people like, um, we are all very complex and we change our minds all the time. So
Hmm. Hmm.
like gathering someone with the set of principles is like, I think I had to be detached from any outcome of even expecting people to follow my principles, you know. So like the realistic thing is that it will happen, what like every person will follow their principles, the principles to the extent that they want, and to the extent that they are capable, or yeah, I
Hmm.
don't know. And I myself also, um the same.
Hmm. Yeah, my experience in Brazil with you was that it felt very much like it felt very rich as a learning container, actually. Like it really embraced the plurality and the diversity of each person's unique learning edge. And I think that was something that was directly sourced from and by you, like this like way in which, yeah, like what happens when there's children who are part of this, what happens when there's language differences, there's like folks here who are here who only speak Portuguese, there's folks who are here who are from like an Amazonian indigenous context. Like it's very, you kind of embraced a real invitation into diversity, which kind of brought its own chaos in a lot of ways. And also there was like, yeah, there was a lot of beauty in that chaos, a lot of aliveness and magic. And then also a lot of, I think, tension and friction. So I liked how you're describing, it's like, I think when you reflect on your experience as a source keeper and as a host of a gathering, having kind of gathered folks from all over the world to, like, I think responding to something that was something like, for me, it's like something sparked alive in me when I read your invitation, when I felt your invitation. I guess like my question for you is like, yeah, actually it's a simpler question. I don't want to be too poetic about it. It's like, if you were to organize something like New Seeds for Terra again, like what would you now like what would you do differently? What would you like, what are the wisdoms you have learned that you would apply forward?
Mhm, mhm, mm, mm. I think I would actually relax even more into the chaos instead of trying to control it. Because even though I was maybe like embracing chaos, but like to some extent, I was always, the part of me that is like a control freak was often very activated, like with the schedule, with and I actually created a container where there was like someone cooking for us, and like, and I delegated tasks, for example, the logistics to Bruna, because I wanted to allow myself to be in that relaxed state. And yet it was difficult because especially the emergent schedule, like pure chaos. And in a way, I think, mm, yeah, I think I would have to answer it in a simple way. I would have be more loving
Mm.
towards this chaos, because I was at times judging, and that was reflected in the group, like people judging the chaos. Um, and in a way, I think everything that happened was only possible because of the initial chaos. And so in a way, I wouldn't, it's like a piece of artwork. Like I wouldn't change it, like it came forth like that for in its own way. If I were to do something in the future, I would do like another artwork, like probably not the same.
Mm.
And yeah, but my relationship with my controlling self is a big edge for me usually, because it's also this part of me, the controlling part is usually the part of me that actually enables all the makes everything happen, actually, because if I don't do anything, nothing happens. But there's something about like right timing and like refining that, my own relationship with my masculine and feminine, like
Mm.
not overstepping one way or another. You know what I
Mm.
mean?
You know, I speak more to that actually. What is that, I guess, balance between the masculine and feminine mean to you or feel like to you?
Mm. It's very nuanced, and in a way you could say like the controlling self is my masculine, but it's actually, I associate actually with my mother,
Mm.
who is very controlling. So it's like my own inner, it's actually maybe a feminine part. I don't know. So um I don't know. I don't know how to label the parts. But I would say that if there is trust in emergence, like I intentionally sourced something that was like to be emerged, you know? So if I can trust that, if the part of me that doesn't trust that can relax,
Mm.
then the part of me that is more emergent and maybe spontaneous can actually have more space. Yeah. Yeah, and it was like high intensity. I remember not sleeping well any of the nights. I remember having crazy dreams during the night. I remember like constantly facing conflicts in interpersonal conflicts inside the group, and sometimes even being surprised with like, oh, this person and this person like, and the fragmented, like the lack of coherence, and like each person like doing their thing. And then there was also like the contrast in the end of experiencing um coherence.
Mm.
And I think that's a mystery, and I think it's not up to me to create coherence. I think, of course, I have a role, but I don't really, if you were to tell me like, how do you create I don't know. I don't know how to create coherence. I have no idea. It's something that happened when I least expected. It was just like, oh, it's happening now.
Mm. And what is it like when it happens?
It felt like a miracle, actually. It felt like, oh wow. And it felt like I was having a I was having a trip. Felt like many times actually having like I was hallucinating, or I don't know. It was, yeah.
Mm. I'm curious just for folks to get a better sense of it. Like, do you remember a particular experience where that coherence erupted and like what happened in the group or in the environment?
Yeah. It was, I think, one of the last days when I just came out of a check-in with you and Nick, actually. And it was a very intense moment. And right after that, I was actually exhausted. My body was just like super exhausted. And I came up to in the hill, and there was something happening, and everyone was planting trees, and I was like, oh yeah, this is what we wanted to do. And but it felt like it was happening. It was just happening. It was not something that anyone was making it happen. It was just really emerging from the land. There was like a song playing and we were all like that. And I was like, oh, okay, it's happening. And I felt a profound relief, actually. That was my experience.
Mm.
Like, just, oh, wow. Okay. Felt like, and I think these experiences for me are like the way I would describe them, it's like they're rites of passage, because it takes there's usually something that breaks, or there's usually some sacrifice of something, and there's usually like,
Mm.
until there is like a moment of beauty. And I was reflecting on that, because I think what we are learning with this kind of work is to relearn like the wisdom of rituals and rites of passage, and they are not, it's like Bonnie said to you, they are not nice. It's not nice, like, and it's actually, you have to choose to go through it, and it felt like like an initiation of something that is very hard to do, but you do it because you, okay, I'm gonna grow from it. And that's how it felt to me to lead this thing.
Mm.
it it was like, okay, I have to do this because I have to learn from it. And yeah, there's one ritual in one tribe in the Amazon where they, like, it's the rite of passage from boy to man, like boys becoming man, and they have to wear this glove that is full of ants inside, and they have to dance all night with that glove and feel the bites all night long. Like, it's a lot of ants, and the bites with, like, it's very painful, and they have to keep dancing with the pain. um and that's sometimes how it felt for me in Brazil, like, oh, the all the there was like some sort of persistence of like, oh, let's dance. This. Yeah.
Keep dancing through all the bites.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Amanda. I'm noticing a desire to bring Ria now into the space and see what questions are alive with her around source keeping. Ria, if you want to video yourself and join us. Pieces to you, Ria.
Yeah, just two things. I'm pretty tired, and my connection sometimes fails here where I am. And I was wondering, because I was just thinking, we talk a lot about how difficult it is, and da, 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 da. And of course, you told that story about, oh, it's happening. I wonder if there's more juicy stories or where you feel like, oh wow, this is good, or this is great, or because of course, if we look from, let's say, the patterns, the ego, then it's like, it's difficult, but there's also another side. Like, seems to me we haven't spoken about that at all. So that's my question.
About, you mean like the moments of beauty that make it worth? Yeah. I think for me, one thing that and I think that's something very particular of my longing, and the longing of my soul, maybe, is this being close to kids and nature. And whenever I could, I would actually just hang out with the kids and they were so sweet. There was Kine, which is our pie's daughter. She was 4. And yeah, and there was Fran, which was Vitor's sun. And there were moments where I was like, it's so nice to be with them. I was just enjoying really, and I wanted to include them. And in the first day when we did the opening ceremony, we created an altar together, and I invited them to also collect flowers, and it was so cute. They took it very seriously. They were like, okay, I'm gonna do it, and then they started collecting flowers, and they started looking for me because they wanted to bring it to me. And then and I was walking, and when I came back, they were like super happy to see me, and they just came running, and like these little things that I realized like I miss so much, which is like the type of life that maybe I would have if I would live in a community where there's like all generations, and even if I don't have children, I can play with people's children and also be there for them. And I think it's a longing for community, for being in community, which somehow it's not so easy nowadays. I don't know. So this is also like something that even surprised me of how deep that longing was inside me, because it was like the thing that after that it was the thing that I missed the most, and then like the playfulness and also the seriousness of being around kids. It's amazing. And yeah. Mm. And one more moment that comes to my mind. Well, another moment was, yeah, that was like, wow. Um, two moments. Um, there was this capoeira class we did, which is not like anything related with intersubjectivity or dialogue. It's just capoeira. It's just, but everyone wanted because they were in Brazil, and they were like, yes, capoeira, and they were people really wanted to experience also like the and it's all about embodiment in the end. So you could say like it's not totally unrelated because you'll learn a lot about how to be confident in your animal body through capoeira. And it was so cute, everyone dancing capoeira. I don't know, it was like a moment of, it was very powerful. Yeah, I think this practices with the body, and it's very strong in Brazil. They tend to bring us more down to earth and more like, and this was something that I was actually missing always in this intersubjective spaces. It's all very much up here in the ideas and theories and and Brazil is like was grounding us to like our legs and feet. And so that was also something. And the third thing that I would say is that the soul cloak ritual that Nick did with our pie and yeah, it was crazy. Yeah, and there was, yeah, it was very mysterious. Like Kim arrived from the US right before this ritual started, and she brought me like a rose from, it was so weird and beautiful and mysterious, you know. It's just like makes me wonder about the meaning of all this, of the work we do in collective presencing. And yeah.
Yeah, thanks. I don't have more questions at the moment, so it might be time to open it up.
Yeah, why don't we allow everyone to reveal their faces from behind the veil? And I think I just want to, I love that question and what it brought forth in you, Amanda, and into the field. There was so much play, so much joy and delight and aliveness and embodiment, like sensuality in that container. And I feel like that's something, my sense is like when you're a source keeper and you're sourcing a field and holding it that way, it's like who you are and all of your aliveness will show its many faces. And I was feeling that again. Okay, so now let's open up the space for folks who have any questions for Amanda. We'll kind of go with talking stick in the middle and pick it up if you have a question. Peace down.
I'll pick up the slack. It's actually not a question unless it's sort of a recollection. I thought wanted to add to what was said about the sourcing of that gathering of Brazil, particularly is my sense of at least a piece of it coming in to the field. The idea of the gathering. It happened in the Berlin gathering over the summer. In that, remember that when we were outside in the garden and we were doing that, you know, particular ritual that was going on in Berlin like that, and everybody was sort of so wild. It's like it was like everybody took ayahuasca without taking ayahuasca. Everybody was screaming and rolling around. I mean, it was off the fucking hook. It was amazing. Me too. I mean, everybody was like nuts when I was painting on you guys. And anyway, so the thing that I want to recall about that is my senses, I felt the entity of the Brazil gathering arrive into that field. I didn't know what it was at the time, but like a big ball of energy fell out of the sky and landed or came out of the ground, maybe is better to say like that, and popped into the field. And it was like breathtaking in its enormity. And it was scary and wild and earthy and like an animal or something, like a ghost. And it was there. And I didn't know what it was. And then when you said to me, do you want to help me do the Brazil thing? I was like, oh, it was that. That's what it was, like that. But I didn't know what it was. I felt it come. I mean, Sam's nodding, he was there as well. Something arrived into the field, literally in a field. We were in a field. And it was like, bang, this thing came. And then and I was like, what the fuck is that? Like that, what is that just came in like that? And we didn't know. And then we did. It's strange. That's just mysterious, isn't it? I don't know what that is or how that works or what it means or what to do about it, or how to invite it, or how to catch it, or who it belongs to when it falls out of the sky like that. Well, that was so real and palpable. No, you're nodding too, Cheryl. It was, yeah, those of us that were there, it's unquestionable that that happened. And just, I don't know what to make of that exactly. But I like it. It's interesting. It's not everyday occurrence. Yeah, stick down.
I'll pick up. Yeah, that was recalling memories of the mystery of there's something around these like intimations of what has yet to come. You know, that parts of us that are more stretched out in time than we ordinarily think. But Bonnie has been provoking things for me, and I just really appreciate. I'm really appreciative of this whole series. It's addressing for me like the questions that are the most essential at the moment. And sometimes I feel, you know, I've been getting this energy from Bonnie recently where it feels like she like kind of maybe roasts collective presencing a little bit, or maybe roasts some of the cultural holding patterns that we get to in our practice. And I get like this image came to me during this of people stepping onto a bridge to get to the other side, and then like being on the bridge but marveling at the view, and like getting stuck marveling at the view, and then this wily trickster coming and like ragging on the view to try to see who's going to remember they're crossing a bridge. And my question is this. I think that thinking about collective presencing as a practice, and maybe how hard it is to, how easy it is to slip back to go backwards on the bridge rather than go forward. And I guess my question is, in these experiences of source keeping, does it feel like the training wheels of collective presencing practice are starting to come off? Which is to say, there's a connection to what we practice, but in a more expanded way, where you can stay connected to that without the slowness and the talking piece and the protocol so much, but even in the messiness, in the conflict, in the chaos, as you said. And do you feel that collective presencing practice has made it, if so, has CP practice kind of made it possible to start moving into that? It's like, yeah, that's the question.
Thank you. Yeah, there are two answers, I think, to this question. One thing that I notice is that not only in Brazil, also in Berlin, they were like, I see them as like sisters containers in a way. And they were both made of people that like there were some practitioners and some people who don't actually have any practice in collective presencing. And I felt the I would say like the depth of the practice really increases when we are with a group of practitioners that like everyone is a committed practitioner. And I think there's something about that is different from just trying to practice in different ways. So so then that's one thing. The other thing is that yes, I think it's possible to once I noticed this in my intimate relationships, like I noticed that I am doing collective presencing, but it's not like I'm using a talking piece necessarily, but I am staying present. But what happens in what happened in Brazil is that like we were actually introducing the practice to some people that never practiced before, and that was like almost like I was also curious, like to know if we could become like if I could try to start sustaining the practice in Portuguese here in Brazil, and I haven't had the energy to do that yet. I think it requires the energy of a group really to decide together. Yeah, but that maybe others will have more to add. I don't know.
You know, pick up the piece. There's something really, I was taken most in your response with Cheryl and the interaction around looking at coherence, not knowing what it is, noticing what it is. It's like there's a near romance. Some you know, what I think of is like there's a kind of intimacy that the collective trusts, or something like the trying falls away into a movement, you know, kind of like lovemaking in a moment when you know each other, when it just comes, what's wanted and what's given and what's received is pulling forth. Reminds me as well of what Nick said, as that thing, as the spirit of something is conceived, right? Like in the body of the group, or something like that. We know that. And there's something that I can feel my own times if I try to engineer, manage, masculine approach, find a recipe for it. It's like, let go of that, create the conditions and give myself to them. That feels much more resonant with what source keeping is doing, and that I hunger for, and that, yeah, really appreciating this exploration. Thank you. Peace back.
I'll pick up the piece. That was just wonderful. Thank you, really. And what was one of the great things about it is we were asked to black our screens. And so I walked around listening to you. I didn't sit here, and I heard it and responded much better. It was moving around. I was looking out the window and it was coming in much more clearly than if I'm just sitting here to be looked at and look at you. So that was fabulous. Thank you. I even had a bit of cheese and cracker because I was starving. But it was what I was intrigued too by that whole thing of coherence and incoherence. It's partly linked to my day job, but it's also because I think that thing around energy is there. Because I know if when I'm hosting, being a source, trying to sort of connect to some sort of source that I can keep, some space I can hold, with all the different influences I have on that, because we all bring our own practices and baggages to that. But and I find it fascinating, really, how, you know, as well, beekeeper or source keeper, when you're there, that in that role, you know, there are people looking to you to kind of guide and project coherence, or challenging you for not being coherent enough. And it can then lead to sort of different energies that might be more depleting, but not necessarily so, you know. And I heard you saying about how your body was just so tired at one point, which I can imagine it was. But it was as if there's this other sort of type of energy, which we know is there, you know, but it kind of then makes that not important. And then you're back in the field of connection. And anyway, I just found that really interesting. Thank you.
I want to pick up a little bit back to Sam's question or comment. Like, can we go without the training wheels or something like that? I think we're in that shift where we try, where we experiment. I want to link it with something else that was said, like coherence, yeah, but it's also that mystery, or maybe that's another word for it, for the coherence. But somehow how difficult it is for us Western trained minds and bodies to actually keep in touch with the mystery of life, like embodied way, not just having this idea and understanding, but like a constantly yeah, as if your identity, your center of gravity is in the unfolding of life instead of in the planning and in the all that. I'm not sure if I'm very clear, but I think we're getting there. But as we have seen in the, let's say, the unpacking of the Belgian gathering, it takes a lot to say that, to put us back into the groove of trust and coherence, and try to tease out the threads that were old and wounds that were stepped on, and like, okay, now we're back to the trust, coherence, mystery. I think it's all related. But how does it work that callings arrive in somebody or in some people, or I don't know, don't have any explanation for that so far. Soul, mystery.
I want
Yes.
to pick
Go Dave.
up. Thanks, Nick. This feels like a real pivot point, so I appreciate that, Nick. I sense something out there calling. I recognize, Amanda, your rite of passage and your initiation that you walked into, that you're strolling in the garden of now. But what I see, what's calling to me, is not your initiation or your initiation, Cheryl, that you're strolling in, but our initiation, mine as well. So I sense something very moving for me with both of you, Amanda and Cheryl. And it's something around the emotion that you displayed, Amanda, around people coming together in that kind of a harmonious, loving way that you want, the world you want. And it has something to do with Cheryl and Rhea, what you know, that thing you talked about, that you know, that you've known since you were just came into life. Not the way we relate, that way we could relate. Okay, so let me just take a minute. What I want to say to Cheryl and Amanda is this. I've known each of you for about 3 years. There is a depth, a nuance, and a sacredity. Sacredity, is that a word? A sacredness about how you hold me. It's with dignity that you close your eyes and listen and pay attention. And it's ordinary. And because you add a little extra attention through that dignity and respect, it becomes extraordinary. So I want you to know that I'm here in this tunnel of initiation with you as we move forward. And I want you to know how grateful I am to have each of you in my life so I can see, so I can taste. The dreams that we unfold together. Thanks again, Nick, for letting me share.
Yeah, you're welcome. I just was going to build a little on what Rhea said about the mystery and coherence and trust and things. I think one thing we've been, when I say we, like what I mean by we is people trying things out, initiating, co-initiating, co-holding, all of us, you know, like trying stuff out and then failing in a good way, failing forward. I think one thing we've been learning, what is to do with, you know, contraction and expansion, or, you know, this movement of closing versus opening like that. And I'll speak for myself, you know, in triggers and contractions, you can't hold space. You can't. That's why we do it as hosting teams like that. And I think when also when you the more closed, like the harder it is to source anything, because it's like the window of opportunity of something to come in gets smaller like that. It goes in like that, and I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I think it just seems to be the way. It's like that, and so part of the preconditions for these things have got to do with expansion and openness and trust and states of openness within the self and the group as well. I don't know whether to call that coherence or something else, but it's like levels of trust and openness and relaxation and holding just seem to be necessary at the individual level and at the group level for stuff to come in and for stuff to be holdable like that. And again, we all go like that. I think some more than others, me more than most. So I'm not pointing at anybody, but yeah, it's just really interesting. It's sort of almost binary in my system like that. When I'm open and trusting and expanded, like tons of really interesting things start to happen. And when I'm not, it's they don't. And I can't hold space and I can't do anything except take care of myself and barely even do that. Interesting just to know that, you know. And I think as is true for the individual is also true at the group level as well. It's like, you know, this just the coherence and trust, mutual trust, and the capacity to be open, stay open as a group as the energy intensifies, as more stuff comes in like that. It's like, it's hard, I think, but necessary over time. And something stick down.
There's a question that's alive with me, and I notice wanting to hear from both Amanda and Nick. I would love to hear about your relating as co-hosts and the journey that you went on together, since there's a lot there for all of us to learn from. Amanda, if you want to go first, or Nick, either or.
That feels like the most intimate question, actually, somehow. Without Nick, I couldn't have done it. That's a fact. And like the amount of dedication and energy and consistency, like in the preparation, and it's just, and also like how Nick was open to then also, like Nick was also the abundance chief officer. I think that was his role. And he was like very committed to, also in Berlin, like creating economic models for these gatherings to happen. And he started to collaborate also with Paola, who is the land host, creating new stuff. They created like a bundle of products. He started collaborating with Awapai. Like they're like I really appreciate his willingness to collaborate with everyone and create this abundance. And it was also like, it was the thing that allowed me to do the thing, and it was also the most challenging thing. I noticed also afterwards there was a big pattern coming up in me, which was like the need to see Nick happy. And because Nick had a very difficult experience, and like in a way, he struggled with some of the aspects of the container, and I was like feeling guilty for his experience being bad, or it was hard for me. And I actually I realized, oh, I it's hard for me to accept this. I couldn't hold myself in that, especially like it felt like I did something wrong. I did things that were wrong, but I know that this is like a pattern that was also coming up for my own healing process, of always thinking that I did something wrong and then feeling guilty. And I was, that pattern was active. Maybe I was, and I was probably projecting onto him like this sense of a father figure who judges something for being wrong, and like the authority figure, and which is like a big pattern in my life, I guess, that I'm always in tension with. I guess, maybe there's more, of course, but I can end here for now.
What was the question, Cheryl? Say the question.
My question was around your relating and the journey you've been on together as co-hosts.
Yeah, same as Amanda. I mean, it feels like the most vulnerable question. It's interesting that I think part of the reason for that, and I think it's vulnerable generally, that question about for both, I was co-host of both Belgium and Berlin and Brazil. And they're very special relationships, the relationship of people that hold the gathering. It's a very particular thing that we're doing, and it requires a degree of trust and intimacy and honesty and vulnerability that is certainly more than friendship, more than I've experienced in Game A in business collaborations, and at times more than I've experienced in intimate relationships with a partner. Actually, at times there's levels to it that are really intense. I think really quite intense, because you're holding a group of people together. You're holding together a group of people, souls other than yourself, in very, very high frequencies. And so it's like what comes up in you and the other, and the interpersonal field and the energy of the container. It's so intense. And I've likened it to climbing Everest together. It's like, it's not like going for a drink at the bar together. It's like trying to do something which can probably kill somebody if you're not careful. So the level of trust required to hold on to each other and kind of like be honest about one's capabilities and limitations, and call out, when you can't actually do the next bit of the climb. And if you slip, you pull everybody on the same rope. If you fall, everybody falls, sort of thing. It's intense, I think, and I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say that. I'm not being hyperbolic. I think that's real, actually. It feels like there's an awful lot at stake, actually, for each person in these things. I think we're all learning that. We're all learning how much as we get better at this. But just let me say a couple of things. I'm going to say something difficult it's nothing to do with Amanda, it's just to do with me. Just difficult for me to say this, but I'll try to tell the truth when I can. Is in the post-analysis of Brazil, I wondered whether or not it was actually mine to co-host. I did wonder that. It was definitely Amanda's to initiate. That's 100% true. And I can understand why she asked me. And I think I could have been, I think I would easily have been a very supportive person to Amanda. I wanted to do that. Part of my motivation to do it was like, I can see that Amanda and Cheryl and a number of other people, young space holders in these fields, are going to be really powerful leaders of the future of the field like that. And I wanted to support that like that. But I'm not sure that's the same as, let's do a gathering together and let me co-host it. I don't know if that's the same thing or not. You know, I'm 57 and Amanda's 30. I mean, like, I'm English, and half the people that I was so out of my element and out of what I was doing, you know, and so it may have been that I should have been the chief abundance officer and consigliere and whatever, but perhaps not the actual space holder. And I'm learning about that. I know I'm saying a lot. I won't say a few other things. And this is nothing against the Brazil gathering, but it's absolutely clear to me that I was supposed to be one of the co-space holders of Berlin. That's absolutely clear to me. That's closer to my work in the world around creativity and intersubjectivity, whereas Earth-related stuff is not my work. And I'm not eco at all. I'm not eco. And so I think I underestimated my own evaluation, because it was like, I was like, oh, I want to support young emerging space holders like that. And I didn't slow down enough and go like, but do I care about Earth as a lover? Yeah, sort of, yeah, but it's not really my gig, you know, Earth as a lover. I'm like, I'm the guy burning down the rainforests. Yeah. But that's not anything to do with Amanda. That's to do with source. Like source, everything has to be looked at through the lens of, is this what's supposed to happen from source? And if it isn't, don't do it. No matter what. It doesn't, it's like marrying the wrong person. It's just like, don't do it, you know, if it's not sourced. It's like, so anyway, yeah. I hope that's okay to say that. I hope that's not painful to hear. I don't know. That's the truth. I've thought about that a lot. Yeah.
Just to pick up on that, Nick, I think we're all in this big field of not knowing, and we try, and then you understand, like, okay, that was kind of next to my path, but it was not really my path. And that kind of sensitivity we have to develop, and we probably have to develop by failing and by, yeah, you only get that capacity by noticing, like, oh, I was a tiny bit off. Next time, that's more aware. So, yeah.
Yeah, something that was coming up for me as I was hearing this. Yeah, like the truth of how intimate it is to co-host with another or two others. And linking that with what Sam brought up around kind of like taking off the wheels and just like rolling, is that I think we all, for those who co-host a collective presencing like Friday Stoa session together, we already kind of know what it's like to do that. Like David, for example, or Justin with you, it's like we kind of pass each other the piece sometimes. If one person is framing, another person's holding, and then sometimes there's kind of this fluid adaptation, like especially when you really feel into the way we're kind of co-holding the energetics of the field. At some point, there's this flow state. And when it happens, it's like, oh, we're not in these discrete roles where someone's a tech host and someone's doing this. It's like we're holding it. And I think there's like some aspect of when we move into this circle of creativity. So this kind of your presence, even as you're creating together, moving in the world together, taking risks with each other. There's it's like a new threshold of the work that we've been doing over the past 2 years of being in that kind of field coherence through the Zoom session, but now with like bodies in space, and now with not just bodies in space, like, but the space includes, like when we were in Belgium, like land and food and like, I don't know, using like the outdoor toilet together and sleeping in tents next to each other and sharing rooms and meditating together. And there's like so much more energy there suddenly that we have to co-hold and be able to do that same kind of coherent dance with. And I think like something that was coming up for me was at some point we're learning it in dyads, or we're learning it in smaller groups, because sometimes that's kind of as far as you can go right now. But at some point we need to all co-host together. It's like everyone here, there's 13 people in this Zoom room right now. We're all co-hosting together all the time. And it doesn't mean that everyone's always holding frame or everyone's always like front of the room, but it means that you know and trust the field enough and the co-hosting of everyone that if you're contracted and need to retreat, you pull back because someone will take over. Like the field and the swarm, the bees will just like, the bees know their wisdom kind of like thing. And I can feel the potential of that, but we're also not there yet. So we have to train, we have to learn how to be intimate with one another and to stumble and to know like the little kind of like off alignments just enough to be like, oh, this is actually what I'm supposed to be doing. And it's really hard to know that unless you're willing to make some mistakes along the way. Yeah. So just wanted to bring that into the space.
That feels like you were pollinating.
Yeah, I just feel compelled to add it. I don't regret a single thing. So what I just said doesn't mean that I've got any regrets about any of those gatherings or any of those things that I did, because there's no way to learn except by failing. There's just no way to do it. It's like, there's no way. It's like, that's it. The failure is not learning from it. That's the failure. The failure is being ashamed of it and hiding it and not wanting to talk about it. It's like, get all the shit on the table. Let's talk about it. Let's see what Apollo 13, like what works on this ship. Like, you know, how do we get this thing back to Earth? That's what we're doing, I think. It's just, you'll throw your body at it, you know.
I'll pick up the piece. Hi all. Nice to see you, Amanda. Yeah, it's funny. I haven't been in a field like this for a little while. In Brazil, I was, especially with some time afterwards, like really realizing what like a spell Brazil casts in the lead up to it, and then afterwards, and like how much it was like sort of shifting of a world of a kind of way of seeing, or like being in a different mode. Yeah, and then that just has me thinking a little bit about culture shock, and that when you're in a different space. And of course, Brazil was also just literally, I was in Brazilian culture as well as the culture of the container that I was in, and without the negatives well, I mean, there was negatives, there was friction in the field for people for sure, but just thinking about that, and then you're longing for community off the top of the call, and then kind of Cheryl sharing about groups hosting together so that when one person kind of contracts, another person can step in. And thinking about that as maybe a big difference between community in a particular sense of the word, like in a sense of a community, like a thing that's almost like a formalized organization that can kind of be named, like I am a member of this, I live on this land, I've like entered an agreement with these people, these are the protocols by which we operate. Versus like culture, which is so much more nebulous and so hard to like my culture is not held up by any individual. If 50% of you can't even, it doesn't even have clearly defined lines, right? But like you can pick whatever like intersection you want of like who I am, and like that thing doesn't belong to anybody. And someone becoming contracted changes it and affects it and is in the field and pulls it in a direction, but it doesn't completely. And in fact, when someone does become too much identified with the culture, it's almost like tyrannical. It's like we don't like that. Who lets this person be the center of things? And so I'm just thinking about the tension between those, and this like maybe small irony in this like attempt. It's almost like this like scientific process of like trying to bring something down to its smallest version, to like really think about it. It's like, what is this culture thing, and making it smaller and smaller and smaller, and then kind of like, and then trying to create one. So there's like, and that's often this thing that we do. We're trying to understand something, and we like try to build something that's like the thing we're trying to understand, to see how is this thing that I built the same as this thing that I'm longing for, and how is it different? But that building right now has been happening in this very like, even if they're not egoic, like there's a source keeper, it's kind of singular or whatever. It's directed through a person in a way, and it lets you kind of build this little snow globe universe and like explore that snow globe universe. But then all these weird things that come up in the snow globe, like, wow, it like doesn't fit very many people inside of it, or the lights don't work or whatever, because it's like a microcosm or something. And so I feel now in this longing for, okay, but now how do we get from one source keeper to many and have it like the thing hold itself? We're almost trying to like scale that up and be like, okay, we got it working in simulation a little bit, like now how is this, like we're noticing all the gaps between these things and like a culture. And I feel this longing to create a culture. And then I also note that I don't think anybody ever gets to decide they've not finished that or accomplished that, or, done. Here's the boundaries of it. And so I also wonder whether you'll ever know if you have, like perhaps Berlin and Brazil and collective presencing and all of these things. I mean, there clearly is a culture of these people here, and this one isn't singularly source kept. And maybe that is in the end. Anyway, these are the thoughts that have been coming to mind throughout this. Peace back.
It makes me think of the Bonita's Rice model of the individuation of the self, I think. And then she talks about how the self evolves, and then there's the we, and then it's yeah, it's I think you're pointing in that direction, maybe, because I do see a point in experiencing like my individuality in creating a container that is like I get to decide the principles. Like it's like I recommend it. And I was saying this, I recommend this experience to everyone because you will see your soul. And you will never again complain about any leadership. Like it's just you will understand everyone that's trying to do something in the world because and that's what ultimately what I gain from all this is just like, wow, like self-love and self-discovery, that's what we talk about often. And like that's for me, like in a practical way, that's one way of doing it, maybe in a very artistic. And then also the humbleness that comes with it, because all my arrogance is just has to be challenged. Yeah, and I wanted to thank everyone for coming also. Thank you, Cheryl, for interviewing, and Ria.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Amanda, for giving so generously and being open to the intimacy and vulnerability of these questions and what arises.
Thank you.
Thank you for everyone's listening and holding.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Jenna.
Thanks for calling this in, Amanda.
Thank you, Sam.
Bye-bye.
Bye,
Bye.
Rebecca.
I have something to say, Cheryl.
Yes.
Should we stop recording maybe?
Oh, yeah, please.